The city of Hartfield hummed under the weight of its industrial heartbeat, its skyline a jagged silhouette of factories and glass towers piercing the dusk. At the edge of the manufacturing district stood Grayson Textiles, a company that had woven itself into the fabric of the city's history. From a single loom in a dusty shed 50 years ago, it had grown into a powerhouse, its threads clothing millions across the country. But the heart of Grayson Textiles was tired, and its founder, Eleanor Grayson, felt it more than anyone. At 68, Eleanor stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of her office on the 12th floor, her grey eyes tracing the lines of the factory below. Her silver hair was pulled into a neat bun, and her tailored suit hid the slight tremble in her hands. The view was familiar, workers moving like ants, trucks unloading bales of cotton, the faint hum of machinery, but it no longer brought her pride. Something was wrong. Orders were delayed, profits were slipping, and whispers of corruption had begun to seep through the boardroom. She had built this company on trust, quality, and fairness, but now it felt like a house of cards teetering on the edge. "Miss Grayson, the quarterly reports," said Clara, her assistant of 20 years, placing a thick folder on the mahogany desk. Clara's voice was soft, almost hesitant, as if she sensed the storm brewing in Eleanor's mind. "Thank you, Clara," Eleanor replied, her voice steady but distant. She didn't turn from the window. "Please ask Samuel to come up." Samuel Holt, the company's chief operating officer and Eleanor's oldest friend, entered with the ease of someone who belonged. At 70, his face was a map of wrinkles, each line a story of late nights, tough deals, and shared dreams. He wore a simple sweater, a stark contrast to the polished suits of the younger executives. He sat in the leather chair across from Eleanor's desk, his eyes searching hers. "How bad is it?" he asked, cutting through the silence. Eleanor sighed, finally turning to face him. "Bad enough. The numbers don't lie, Sam. Someone's skimming, small amounts but consistent. And the delays in production, they're not accidents. I've tried everything. Training programs, new managers, outside consultants. No one's stepped up. No one has the spine to lead this place the way it deserves." Samuel leaned back, his fingers drumming on the armrest. "You're looking for someone who doesn't exist, Ellie. Someone with your fire, your principles. That's rare." "I know," she said, her voice softening. "But I'm running out of time. If I don't find someone soon, I'll have to sell. I can't let Grayson fall into the hands of those vultures at Apex Industries. They'll strip it for parts, erase everything we built." Samuel's jaw tightened. "Give me a chance. I've got an idea. A test. One last try to find the right person." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Another test? Sam, we've been down this road." "This one's different," he said, a glint in his eye. "Trust me, I've been watching someone. They don't know it yet, but they might just be what you're looking for." On the factory floor, the air was thick with the scent of cotton and machine oil. Workers moved in a choreographed dance, feeding fabric through massive looms that clattered rhythmically. Among them was Jacob Ellis, 29, a delivery driver who'd been with Grayson for just over a year. His navy uniform was slightly faded, his hands calloused from years of manual work. Jacob was unremarkable to most, a quiet man who kept to himself, delivered supplies on time, and never complained. But his dark eyes held a sharpness, a quiet intensity that went unnoticed by those too busy to look. Jacob maneuvered his forklift through the narrow aisles, stacking crates of raw materials. His earbuds played a podcast on business ethics, a habit he'd picked up during night school classes he could barely afford. He'd dropped out of college after his mother's illness drained their savings, but he hadn't given up learning. Every night he studied, dreaming of a future beyond the driver's seat. "Ellis," barked foreman Rick Callahan, a stocky man with a perpetual scowl. "You're late with the cotton bales for line 3. Move it." Jacob nodded, unfazed. "On it, boss." He knew Rick's temper wasn't personal. It was just the pressure of the factory's recent struggles. Deadlines were tighter, tempers shorter. Something was off, and Jacob felt it, even if he didn't know the full story. As he drove the forklift toward line 3, he overheard 2 supervisors whispering near a stack of crates. "Another shipment's gone missing," one said. "Third time this month. Someone's rerouting the goods, and it's not an accident." Jacob kept his eyes forward, but his mind raced. Missing shipments? That wasn't just a mistake. It sounded like theft. He filed the thought away, focusing on his task. He wasn't paid to ask questions, but he couldn't help wondering. That afternoon, in the break room, the tension was palpable. Workers huddled over lukewarm coffee, murmuring about rumours of layoffs. Jacob sat alone, scrolling through his phone, when Maria Torres, a quality control inspector, slid into the seat across from him. At 25, Maria was fierce, outspoken, and one of the few people Jacob considered a friend. "You hear about the missing shipments?" she asked, keeping her voice low. Jacob glanced up, surprised. "Yeah, overheard something earlier. What's going on?" Maria leaned closer. "It's not just shipments. I was checking the inventory logs last week, and the numbers don't add up. Someone's fudging the records. I tried telling Callahan, but he brushed me off, said it's above my pay grade." Jacob frowned. "That's not right. If someone's stealing, it's everyone's problem. This place is barely holding together as it is." Maria sighed. "I know, but who's going to listen to us? We're just grunts. Callahan's too busy kissing up to the higher-ups, and they're all pointing fingers at each other." Jacob's jaw tightened. He'd seen it before. People in power dodging responsibility while the workers paid the price. "Maybe we should dig a little, quietly." Maria raised an eyebrow. "You, Mr. Keep to himself, since when do you play detective?" He shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Since it feels like the right thing to do." The next day, the factory was buzzing with a different kind of energy. An emergency meeting was called for the quality control team, and whispers of a major screw-up spread like wildfire. Jacob wasn't invited, he was just a driver, but Maria filled him in later. "They lost a huge contract with Meridian Apparel," she said, her voice tight with frustration. $5 million, gone. Someone messed up the fabric quality tests, and now they're blaming my team. Jacob's brow furrowed. "Your team? You're the most thorough person I know. Who's saying it was you?" "Not me directly," Maria said. "They're pinning it on Daniel, the new guy. But I know he didn't touch those tests. It was Vanessa, Callan's favourite. She's been cutting corners for weeks, and he's covering for her." Jacob's stomach churned. He'd seen Vanessa, a senior analyst with a sharp smile and sharper ambition, cozying up to Callahan. It wasn't hard to guess why she was untouchable. "That's not fair. Daniel's got a kid to feed. They can't just throw him under the bus." Maria nodded. "I tried speaking up in the meeting, but Callahan shut me down, said I was out of line. I'm this close to quitting, Jacob, but I need this job." Jacob's hands clenched into fists. He knew what it was like to feel powerless, to watch the system protect the wrong people. "Don't quit yet," he said. "Let's find proof. If Vanessa's fudging tests, there's got to be a trail." Over the next week, Jacob and Maria worked quietly, piecing together clues. Jacob used his access as a driver to check delivery logs, noticing discrepancies in the shipment records. Maria dug into the quality control database, finding altered timestamps on Vanessa's reports. They met in secret, comparing notes in the empty break room after hours. "This goes higher than Vanessa," Maria whispered one night, showing Jacob a printout. "These changes were approved by someone with admin access. Callahan, maybe even someone above him." Jacob's heart raced. "We need to be careful, if they find out we're poking around." "I know," Maria said, "but I can't let Daniel take the fall. He's a good guy. And this company, it used to mean something. My mom worked here 30 years ago. She said it was a place that cared. Now it's just rotten." Jacob nodded. He'd heard stories of Grayson's glory days, when Eleanor herself walked the factory floor shaking hands with workers. That felt like a lifetime ago. "We'll find a way," he said. "We just need one solid piece of evidence." The following Monday, the axe fell. Daniel was called into Callahan's office and fired on the spot. The official reason, gross negligence in the Meridian contract. Maria was livid, storming into the break room where Jacob was eating lunch. "They didn't even let him explain," she said, tears in her eyes. "He's got a 2-year-old daughter, Jacob. This will crush him." Jacob set down his sandwich, his appetite gone. "We can't let this slide. We've got enough to prove it wasn't him. Let's take it to someone who'll listen." Maria hesitated. "Who?" "Callahan's in on it. The board won't care about a couple of nobodies like us." "Then we go straight to the top," Jacob said, his voice firm. "Eleanor Grayson. She's still the CEO. If anyone can fix this, it's her." Maria stared at him. You're crazy. She's untouchable. We'll get fired just for trying. Maybe, Jacob said, but I'd rather lose my job than my self-respect. Getting to Eleanor was no easy task. Her office was a fortress, guarded by layers of assistants and protocols. But Jacob had an idea. He knew the delivery schedules by heart, including the private elevator used for executive deliveries. On Wednesday morning, he volunteered for a supply run to the 12th floor, carrying a crate of archival documents. As the elevator doors opened, he saw Clara, Eleanor's assistant, at her desk. "Delivery for Miss Grayson," Jacob said, holding up the crate. Clara frowned. "Those were supposed to go to storage." "Got a note to bring them here," Jacob lied, his heart pounding. "Urgent," they said. Clara sighed and waved him through. Jacob stepped into Eleanor's office, his palms sweaty. The woman herself stood by the window, her back to him. She turned, her eyes narrowing. "You're not the usual courier," she said, her voice calm but probing. "No, ma'am," Jacob said, setting down the crate. "I'm Jacob Ellis, a driver. I need to talk to you. It's about the Meridian contract." Eleanor's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. "Go on." Jacob took a deep breath, then laid it all out, the missing shipments, the fudged quality tests, Vanessa's involvement, and Callahan's cover-up. He handed her a folder with the evidence he and Maria had gathered. "Daniel didn't make that mistake. He's being scapegoated, and it's not just him. The whole factory's suffering because of this." Eleanor took the folder, her face unreadable. "Why are you telling me this? You're risking your job." "Because it's right," Jacob said simply, "and because I believe you care about this company. The workers talk about you, how things used to be. I think you want it to be that way again." For a long moment, Eleanor said nothing. Then she nodded. "Leave this with me. I'll handle it." The next day, the factory was abuzz. Daniel was called back, reinstated with an apology. Vanessa and Callahan were summoned to a closed-door meeting with the board. By noon, both were escorted out, their faces pale. Whispers spread that evidence of fraud had been uncovered, though no one knew who'd blown the whistle. Jacob kept his head down, driving his forklift as usual. But that evening, as he clocked out, a security guard approached. "Miss Grayson wants to see you. Now." Jacob's stomach dropped. Had he gone too far? He rode the elevator to the 12th floor, bracing himself. When he entered Eleanor's office, she was there with Samuel Holt. Both looked at him with an intensity that made him uneasy. "Jacob Ellis," Eleanor said, her voice steady, "you've caused quite a stir." "I'm sorry if I overstepped," Jacob said quickly. "I just couldn't let an innocent man take the fall." Eleanor held up a hand. "No apologies needed. You did what no one else dared. But I have a question. Why risk everything for someone you barely know?" Jacob hesitated. "Because I know what it's like to be powerless. My mom worked in a factory like this. She was let go for something she didn't do. It broke her. I couldn't watch it happen again." Eleanor exchanged a glance with Samuel, who smiled faintly. "Sit down, Jacob," she said. "There's something you need to know." Eleanor leaned forward, her hands clasped on the desk. "Grayson Textiles isn't just a company to me. It's my life's work. But it's also a promise to my father, who started it with nothing but a loom and a dream. He believed in people, in giving them a chance to prove themselves. I've spent years looking for someone who shares that belief." Jacob frowned, unsure where this was going. "I don't understand." Samuel spoke up, his voice warm but firm. "We've been watching you, Jacob, not just this week, but for months. The way you work, the way you treat people. You're not just a driver. You notice things. You care. And you're not afraid to act when it matters." Jacob's heart raced. "Watching me? Why?" Eleanor opened a drawer and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. Its pages were yellowed, the edges worn. She slid it across the desk. "Open it." Jacob hesitated, then flipped it open. The handwriting was elegant, faded but clear. It was a journal, filled with notes about the company's early days, struggles, triumphs, and a recurring theme, the search for someone to carry the legacy forward. On the last page, a single line stood out. "The true leader is not the loudest or the most powerful, but the one who does right, no matter the cost." "My father wrote that," Eleanor said. "He believed the company's soul was in its people, not its profits. I've been searching for someone like that, someone who'd stand up for what's right, even if it meant losing everything." Jacob's throat tightened. And you think that's me? I know it is, Eleanor said, but there's more. Samuel, tell him. Samuel leaned forward, his eyes twinkling with something like pride. You're not just a driver, Jacob. You're family. Your mother, Anna Ellis. She worked here in the early days. She was one of our best. She was also my niece. Jacob froze. Your niece? That's impossible. She never said anything about... She didn't know, Samuel said. Your mother left before we could tell her the full truth. She was young, proud, and when she was let go, unfairly, as you said, she cut ties. But she was part of this company's heart. And so are you. Jacob's mind reeled. His mother had spoken fondly of Grayson Textiles, despite the pain of her dismissal. She'd never mentioned family ties, never hinted at anything beyond her role as a seamstress. There's something else, Eleanor said, pulling out a document. I'm stepping down as CEO. The board doesn't know yet, but I've made my decision. I want you to take my place. Jacob nearly laughed. The idea was so absurd. Me? I'm a driver. I don't know the first thing about running a company. You know the most important thing, Eleanor said. You know what's right. The rest, strategy, numbers, management, you can learn. Samuel will stay on as your advisor, and I'll be here to guide you. But the company needs someone with your heart, Jacob. Someone who'll fight for its soul. Jacob stared at the document. It was a contract, naming him as the majority shareholder of Grayson Textiles effective immediately. His hands trembled as he read the numbers. 51% of a company worth millions. This can't be real, he whispered. It's real, Samuel said. And it's yours, if you'll take it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Jacob moved into an office he could barely believe was his, the walls lined with photos of Grayson's history. He studied late into the night, learning the intricacies of supply chains, financial reports, and corporate strategy. Samuel was by his side, patient but firm, guiding him through the maze of leadership. The board was skeptical, some outright hostile. A driver? One director scoffed during a meeting. This is a multi-million-dollar company, not a charity project. Jacob stood, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. I may not have your experience, but I know what this company was built on. Trust, quality, people. If you don't believe in that, maybe you're the ones who don't belong here. The room fell silent. Slowly, grudgingly, they began to listen. Jacob sat at his new desk, the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. The office was too big, too quiet, the polished wood and sleek furniture a far cry from the cramped cab of his forklift. The contract sat before him, its ink still fresh. Jacob Ellis, Chief Executive Officer and majority shareholder, Grayson Textiles. He was 29 years old, a high school graduate with a half-finished business degree, and now he was expected to lead a company teetering on the edge of collapse. His hands shook as he read the document again, hoping it might somehow make sense. Samuel Holt stood by the window, his silhouette framed by the fading light of the Hartfield skyline. You're not alone in this, Jacob, he said without turning. Ellie and I have seen this company through worse storms. You've got us, and you've got something none of those boardroom sharks have, a reason to fight for more than just money. Jacob set the contract down, his voice low. I don't know if I can do this, Sam. These people, they've got MBAs, decades of experience. I'm just a driver. They'll eat me alive. Samuel turned, his eyes sharp but kind. You're not just anything. You're the man who stood up when no one else did. You risked everything to save a co-worker you barely knew. That's not something you learn in a classroom. That's who you are. Jacob swallowed hard, thinking of his mother. Anna Ellis had been a seamstress here, her hands steady as she worked the looms, her pride in her work unshakable, even after the company let her go. He'd been just a kid then, but he remembered her tears, her quiet strength. She'd never spoken of Samuel, never hinted at their family tie. Why had she kept it a secret? And why had Samuel waited so long to tell him? A knock at the door broke his thoughts. Clara entered, her expression unreadable. Miss Grayson wants to meet you for dinner tonight, Jacob. She says it's time to talk strategy. 7 p.m. at the Willow on 5th Street. Jacob nodded, his stomach twisting. Thanks, Clara. As she left, Samuel clapped a hand on his shoulder. Get some rest, kid. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. The Willow was a cosy restaurant tucked away in a quiet corner of Hartfield, its warm lights and soft jazz a stark contrast to the factory's harsh fluorescence. Jacob arrived early, dressed in a borrowed suit that felt stiff and foreign. He spotted Eleanor at a corner table, her silver hair catching the candlelight. She waved him over, her smile small but genuine. "Sit, Jacob," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "You look like you're about to face a firing squad." He managed a weak laugh, settling into the seat. "Feels like it, ma'am." "Call me Eleanor," she said, sipping her wine. "You're not my employee anymore. You're my successor." The word hit him like a punch. Successor. It was too big, too unreal. "I'm not sure I'm ready for this," he admitted, staring at the tablecloth. "I don't even know where to start." Eleanor leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "Let me tell you something about leadership, Jacob. It's not about knowing everything. It's about knowing what matters. You proved that when you brought me that folder. You saw an injustice and acted, even though it could have cost you everything. That's the kind of leader this company needs." Jacob shook his head. "But the board, they don't trust me. The workers don't even know me. And the company's in trouble. Those missing shipments, the bad contracts. How do I fix that?" "One step at a time," Eleanor said. "You start by listening. The workers, the managers, even the ones who don't like you, they all know something you don't. Your job is to find the truth in what they say. And you don't do it alone. Samuel's been with me since the beginning. He'll guide you. And Maria, she's sharp. Keep her close." Jacob nodded, thinking of Maria's fire, her refusal to back down. "She's already on my side. She helped me dig up the evidence on Vanessa." "Good," Eleanor said. "You'll need allies. The board's going to test you, and some of them will want you to fail, but you've got something they don't, heart. Don't lose it." The waiter arrived with their meals, grilled salmon for Eleanor, steak for Jacob. He barely tasted it, his mind racing. "What about the missing shipments?" he asked. "Maria and I found some discrepancies, but we didn't have time to trace it all. It's bigger than Vanessa and Callahan." Eleanor's eyes darkened. "I know. I've had my suspicions for a while. Someone high up is involved, someone with access to the supply chain. I need you to find out who, quietly. If word gets out, it could tank our reputation." Jacob's jaw tightened. "I'll do it. But why me? Why not someone with more experience?" Eleanor set down her fork, her gaze softening. "Because you're not tainted by this world yet. You haven't learned to play the game, to cut corners or look the other way. And because Samuel believes in you. He's never wrong about people." Jacob thought of Samuel, the uncle he'd never known he had. "Why didn't he tell me about my mom? About our family?" Eleanor sighed. "That's his story to tell. But I can say this, he loved Anna like a daughter. When she was let go, it broke his heart. He blamed himself. I think he's been waiting for a chance to make it right." The next morning, Jacob arrived at the factory at dawn, his new office key heavy in his pocket. The workers stared as he walked through the floor, their whispers trailing him. "Who's this guy? The new boss? Some kind of joke?" Maria met him at the elevator, her eyes bright with determination. "Ready for this, boss?" she teased, though her voice held a note of worry. "Not even close," Jacob said, forcing a smile. "But I've got you right." "Damn right," she said. "Let's get to work." Their first stop was the Quality Control Office, where Daniel, the reinstated analyst, greeted them with a grateful nod. "I owe you both," he said, his voice thick. "I thought I was done for." "You'd have done the same," Jacob said, though he wasn't sure it was true. Daniel's relief was palpable, but there was fear in his eyes too. The factory was a pressure cooker, and Jacob was about to turn up the heat. Maria pulled up a chair, opening her laptop. "I've been digging deeper into those shipment records. The missing bales, cotton, linen, even some high-end silk, are being rerouted before they hit the warehouse. Someone's signing off on fake delivery slips." Jacob leaned over her shoulder, scanning the screen. "Who has that kind of access?" "Only a few people," Maria said. "Callahan was one, but he's gone. The others are senior logistics managers, Peterson, Lang, and, well, Vanessa's boss, Elaine Carter." Jacob's brow furrowed. "Carter? She's been here forever. Why would she risk it?" "Money," Maria said bluntly. "Or power. People do stupid things for both." Daniel spoke up. "Elaine's been acting weird lately, snapping at everyone, staying late. I thought it was just stress, but maybe." Jacob nodded. "We need proof. Can you pull her access logs without anyone knowing?" Maria grinned. "Already on it. Give me a day." The board meeting that afternoon was Jacob's first real test. He walked into the conference room, a sea of skeptical faces staring him down. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, her presence a quiet anchor. Samuel stood by her side, his arms crossed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Eleanor began, "I'd like to introduce Jacob Ellis, our new CEO. He's stepping into my role effective immediately." The room erupted in murmurs. A grey-haired man introduced as Harold Peterson, logistics director, stood up. "With all due respect, Eleanor, this is madness. He's a kid, a driver. We're in crisis, and you're handing the reins to someone who's never run a company?" Eleanor's eyes flashed. "Jacob has already done more for this company than some of you. He uncovered the fraud that cost us the Meridian contract. He saved an innocent man's job. That's leadership." Peterson scoffed. "He got lucky. What's next? Promoting the janitor to CFO?" A few chuckles rippled through the room, but Jacob felt his face burn. He stood, his voice steady. "I know I'm not what you expected. I'm not sure I'm ready either. But I'm here because I care about this company, about the people who work here, the ones who keep it running. If you don't think I can do this, fine. But give me a chance to prove you wrong." The room fell silent. Eleanor smiled faintly, and Samuel gave him a nod. Peterson sat down, his face red. That night, Jacob couldn't sleep. He sat in his small apartment, the journal from Eleanor open on his lap. His mother's name appeared in a few entries, her work praised as exceptional. "Anna Ellis has a gift," one line read. "She could run this place one day, but she never got the chance." Jacob's chest ached. He wished he could talk to her, ask why she'd kept so much from him. His phone buzzed, a text from Maria. "Found something. Elaine's been overriding shipment logs. Meet me at the factory midnight." Jacob grabbed his jacket and headed out, his heart pounding. The factory was dark and silent, the loom still under the dim security lights. Maria was waiting by the loading dock, a flashlight in hand. "Look at this," she whispered, showing him a stack of papers. "Fake delivery slips signed by Elaine. They match the missing shipments. She's been selling our materials on the black market." Jacob's blood ran cold. "Why? She's got a good job, a pension." Maria shook her head. "I heard she's got debts, gambling, bad investments. She's desperate." Jacob took the papers, his mind racing. "We need to take this to Eleanor, but we have to be sure, if we're wrong." "We're not wrong," Maria said. "I cross-checked everything. It's her." The next morning, Jacob and Maria presented their findings to Eleanor and Samuel in a private meeting. Eleanor's face was grim as she read the evidence. "Elaine's been with us for 20 years, she said. "This is going to hurt." "We can't let it slide," Jacob said. "The workers deserve better. The company deserves better." Eleanor nodded. "You're right. I'll call an emergency board meeting. Elaine will be suspended pending investigation. But Jacob, this is your first big move as CEO. The board's watching. Handle it carefully." Jacob felt the weight of her words. "I will." The board meeting was brutal. Elaine Carter, a tall woman with a commanding presence, denied everything, her voice sharp with indignation. "This is absurd. I've given my life to this company. You think I'd throw it away for what, a few bucks?" Jacob stood, holding the stack of evidence. "It's not a few bucks, Miss Carter. It's hundreds of thousands in stolen materials. These delivery slips have your signature. The timestamps match your logins." Elaine's face paled, but she doubled down. "Those are forged. Someone's setting me up." Maria stepped forward, her voice steady. "I pulled the server logs myself. No one else had access. It's over, Elaine." The board erupted in chaos, but Eleanor silenced them with a raised hand. "Miss Carter, you're suspended effective immediately. Security will escort you out. We'll conduct a full investigation, and if these allegations are true, you'll face charges." Elaine's eyes filled with tears as she was led away. Jacob felt no satisfaction, only a hollow ache. Betrayal cut deep, no matter who it came from. Over the next month, Jacob threw himself into his new role. He met with workers, listened to their concerns, and implemented new transparency measures. Maria led a team to overhaul the quality control system, ensuring no more fudged tests. Daniel became a key ally, his gratitude fueling his loyalty. The board remained divided, but Jacob's quiet determination began to win them over. He worked late, studied hard, and leaned on Samuel's wisdom. Slowly, the factory came back to life, Orders shipped on time, morale improved, and the shadow of corruption began to lift. One evening, as Jacob left the office, Samuel stopped him in the hall. "I'm proud of you, kid," he said, his voice thick. "Your mom would be too." Jacob's eyes stung. "Why didn't you tell her, Sam? About you, about the family?" Samuel sighed, his face heavy with regret. "She was so angry when she left. I thought I'd have time to make it right. Then she got sick, and I waited too long. But you're here now. That's what matters." Jacob nodded, unable to speak. He hugged Samuel, a silent promise to carry the legacy forward. 6 months later, Grayson Textiles, a different place. Jacob stood at the podium in the factory's main hall, addressing the entire workforce. The room was packed, every eye on him. He'd traded his driver's uniform for a suit, but he still felt like an imposter. Yet the applause that greeted him was real. "Thank you," he began, his voice steady. "6 months ago, I was driving a forklift, thinking that was my place. Today, I'm standing here because someone believed I could be more. Eleanor Grayson built this company on trust and hard work. Somewhere along the way, we lost that, but we're taking it back." He paused, scanning the crowd. Maria stood in the front row, her smile wide. Daniel was beside her, holding his daughter's hand. "We've cleaned house," Jacob continued. "No more stolen shipments, no more lies. But this isn't my victory, it's ours. Every one of you who kept showing up, doing the work, believing in this place, you're the reason we're still here." The room erupted in cheers. Jacob's throat tightened as he saw Eleanor in the back, her eyes shining with pride. Samuel stood beside her, nodding in approval. After the speech, Jacob joined them for coffee at the Willow, the same table where it all began. "You did good today," Eleanor said, raising her cup. "The workers trust you. That's no small thing." "I couldn't have done it without you," Jacob said, "or Sam, or Maria." Samuel chuckled. "Don't forget yourself, kid. You're the one who stepped up." Jacob smiled, thinking of his mother. He'd found an old photo of her in the company archives, standing proudly by a loom. He carried it in his wallet now, a reminder of where he came from. "How do you feel?" Eleanor asked. "Like I'm where I'm supposed to be," Jacob said, "but I'm still learning. I want to make you proud, make her proud." "You already have," Samuel said, his voice soft. The next morning, Jacob arrived at the factory early. Maria was waiting in his office, a stack of reports in hand. "New contract with Meridian," she said. "They're giving us another shot." Jacob grinned. "Then let's not screw it up." As they worked through the morning, Jacob felt a shift inside him. The fear was still there, but so was something else, certainty. He wasn't just a driver anymore. He was a leader, carrying a legacy he'd never known was his. The factory hummed around him, alive with purpose. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And for Jacob, that was enough. The morning sun filtered through the factory's high windows, casting long shadows across the looms. Jacob Ellis stood in his office, staring at the Meridian contract Maria had left on his desk. It was a second chance, a lifeline for Grayson Textiles, but the weight of it pressed against him. The board's skepticism, the workers' cautious hope, the whispers of his inexperience, it all swirled in his mind like a storm. He was no longer just a driver, but the title of CEO felt like a borrowed coat, too big and heavy for his shoulders. Maria knocked and entered, her usual energy tempered by a frown. "You okay, Jacob? You look like you didn't sleep." He rubbed his eyes, forcing a smile. "Just a lot to take in. This contract, it's huge. If we mess it up, we're done." "We won't," Maria said, sitting across from him. "The team's solid now. Daniel's running quality checks like his life depends on it, and I've got the production line on track." But she hesitated, her fingers tapping the desk. "But what?" Jacob asked, leaning forward. Maria lowered her voice. "I heard something last night. One of the night shift workers saw Elaine Carter near the loading dock. She's supposed to be suspended, but she was there, talking to someone. They couldn't see who." Jacob's stomach twisted. "Elaine? After everything? What's she doing?" "I don't know," Maria said, "but it's not good. She's got connections, people still loyal to her. If she's sneaking around, she's up to something." Jacob's mind raced. Elaine Carter had been a pillar of Grayson Textiles, trusted by the board and respected by the workers, until her betrayal was exposed. Her suspension was meant to be the end of it, but if she was still lurking, the rot in the company might run deeper than he'd thought. "We need to find out what she's planning," he said. "Can you get someone to keep an eye on the docks?" Maria nodded. Already done. I asked Tony, one of the night guards. He's discreet, and he owes me a favour. But Jacob, be careful. If Elaine's desperate, she's dangerous. That afternoon, Jacob met with Samuel in the small conference room near Eleanor's old office. The older man looked tired, his usual spark dimmed. Jacob slid a cup of coffee across the table. "You okay, Sam? You've been quiet lately." Samuel sighed, wrapping his hands around the mug. "Just feeling my age, kid. This whole thing with Elaine, it's hit me hard. She was one of us, you know. I trained her when she was just a kid, fresh out of college. Thought she had what it took." Jacob nodded, understanding the sting of betrayal. "I'm sorry, but we can't let her sabotage us now. Maria says she was seen at the docks last night." Samuel's eyes narrowed. "That's not good. Elaine knows this company inside out. If she's working with someone, they could do real damage, especially with the Meridian contract on the line." "What do we do?" Jacob asked. "I can't just fire her again. The board's already breathing down my neck, and half of them think I'm in over my head." Samuel leaned back, his gaze steady. "You don't fire her. You outsmart her. Set a trap. Let her think she's winning, then catch her in the act. But you'll need proof, ironclad like last time." Jacob's mind churned. A trap. It was risky, but it could work. "What about the security cameras? Can we get access to the dock footage?" Samuel grinned, a spark of his old mischief returning. "Now you're thinking like a leader. I'll talk to Clara. She's got keys to every system in this place." Over the next few days, Jacob and Maria worked in secret, coordinating with Tony, the night guard, to monitor the loading docks. The Meridian contract demanded a massive shipment of high-grade cotton fabric, and Jacob suspected Elaine might try to disrupt it. He spent hours poring over logistics reports, cross-checking delivery schedules, and reviewing security protocols. The work was exhausting, but it gave him purpose. He wasn't just fighting for the company. He was fighting for the people who believed in him. One evening, as Jacob left the factory, he noticed a figure lingering near the employee parking lot. It was Harold Peterson, the logistics director who'd mocked him at the board meeting. Peterson was on his phone, his voice low but agitated. "No, it's under control," he said. "Just make sure the shipment's redirected by Friday." Jacob's heart skipped a beat. Redirected? He ducked behind a car, straining to hear more, but Peterson ended the call and drove off. Jacob's pulse raced. Peterson was one of the few with access to the shipment system. Was he working with Elaine? He texted Maria immediately. "Peterson's involved. Heard him talking about redirecting a shipment. We need to move fast." Her reply came seconds later. "Meet me at the diner. Now." The diner was a 24-hour joint on the edge of Hartfield, its neon sign flickering in the dark. Maria sat in a booth, nursing a milkshake, her laptop open. Jacob slid in across from her, his nerves on edge. "Show me what you've got," he said. Maria turned the laptop toward him. "Tony got me the dock footage from last night. Look." The grainy video showed Elaine slipping through a side gate, meeting a man in a hooded jacket. They exchanged a package, then vanished into the shadows. "That's not Peterson," Jacob said, squinting at the screen. "Who is he?" "No idea," Maria said, "but I ran the timestamp against the shipment logs. A truck left the dock an hour later, unscheduled. It was supposed to deliver cotton to Meridian, but it never arrived." Jacob's jaw tightened. "They're stealing again, and Peterson's covering the paper trail." Maria nodded. "We need to catch them in the act. Tony says another unscheduled truck is set to leave tomorrow night. If we can get proof, video, documents, witnesses, we can end this." Jacob leaned back, his mind racing. "We'll set up a sting. Get Tony to watch the dock, and I'll talk to Samuel about locking down the system. But we need to keep this quiet. If Peterson or Elaine get wind of it, they'll cover their tracks." Maria's eyes gleamed with determination. "Let's take them down." The next night, the factory was a ghost town, the loom silent under the dim security lights. Jacob crouched behind a stack of crates near the loading dock, his heart pounding. Maria was stationed in the control room, monitoring the cameras with Tony. Samuel had stayed late, ostensibly to review reports, but really to keep an eye on the office wing in case Peterson showed up. At 11:47 p.m., a truck rolled into the dock, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Jacob's phone buzzed with a text from Maria. "It's them. Elaine and 2 others. Recording now." Jacob peered around the crate, his breath shallow. Elaine stepped out of the truck's passenger side, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone. The hooded man from the video was there, along with a second figure, Harold Peterson. Jacob's blood ran cold. It wasn't just Elaine. Peterson, a board member, was neck deep in the scheme. The trio moved quickly, loading crates onto the truck. Jacob's phone buzzed again. "They're taking the Meridian shipment. We've got them on tape." He texted back, "Hold tight, I'm calling Eleanor." Before he could dial, a hand grabbed his shoulder. Jacob spun, heart in his throat, to find Samuel standing behind him, his face grim. "Don't call yet," Samuel whispered. "There's more you need to know." Jacob froze. "What are you talking about?" Samuel's eyes darted toward the dock. "This isn't just about Elaine or Peterson. There's someone else pulling the strings, someone higher up. I've been digging and I found a name in the old records, Victor Lang." Jacob's mind reeled. Victor Lang was the CFO, a quiet, calculating man who'd been with Grayson for decades. "Lang? He's been signing off on every budget, if he's involved." "He is," Samuel said, "but we need proof. Let's get this footage to Eleanor, then set a bigger trap." The next morning, Jacob, Maria, and Samuel met Eleanor in her private office. The footage was damning. Clear shots of Elaine and Peterson loading stolen goods, their voices caught on audio discussing the boss's cut. Eleanor's face was a mask of controlled fury as she watched. "Victor Lang," she said, her voice low. "I should have seen it. He's been too quiet, too cooperative. He's been playing us all." Jacob clenched his fists. "What do we do? If we take this to the board, Lang will deny it, and he's got half of them in his pocket." Eleanor's eyes gleamed with resolve. "We don't go to the board. We go public. Call a company-wide meeting. Show the footage to the workers first. They deserve to know the truth. Then we let the board deal with the fallout." Maria hesitated. "That's risky. If the workers panic, we could lose the Meridian contract." "It's a risk we have to take," Jacob said. "The workers are the heart of this company. If we trust them, they'll trust us." Eleanor nodded. "Set it up for tomorrow. I'll handle Lang." The company-wide meeting was held in the factory's main hall, the same place where Jacob had given his first speech as CEO. The workers filled the space, their faces a mix of curiosity and unease. Jacob stood at the podium, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Maria and Daniel stood nearby, ready to back him up. Eleanor and Samuel were in the wings, watching. "Thank you for coming," Jacob began, his voice echoing through the hall. "You've all heard the rumors, missing shipments, bad contracts, people pointing fingers. Today we're going to set the record straight." He nodded to Maria, who started the projector. The footage played on a massive screen, showing Elaine and Peterson loading crates, their voices clear. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jacob let the video run, then stepped back to the mic. "This isn't just about a few bad apples," he said. "This is about trust. You've given your lives to this company, and some people thought they could take that from you. We're stopping them right now." The room erupted in cheers, but Jacob raised a hand. "There's one more thing. We have evidence that Victor Lang, our CFO, was behind this. He's been stealing from you, from all of us, and he's not getting away with it." The crowd roared, a mix of anger and resolve. Jacob felt a surge of pride. These were his people, and they were fighting back. The fallout was swift. Victor Lang was called to Eleanor's office that afternoon, confronted with the evidence. He tried to deny it, his voice smooth and practiced, but the footage was undeniable. By evening, he was gone, escorted out by security. The board, shaken by the public exposure, voted unanimously to remove him and initiate a full audit. Jacob faced a barrage of challenges in the weeks that followed. The Meridian contract was at risk, with the client demanding assurances that Grayson could deliver. Jacob worked around the clock, meeting with suppliers, reassuring workers and rebuilding trust. Maria and Daniel became his right hands, their loyalty unwavering. Samuel guided him through the financial maze, helping him navigate the audit that uncovered years of Lang's hidden transactions. One night, as Jacob worked late, Eleanor stopped by his office. She looked older, the weight of the betrayal etched into her face, but her eyes were bright with hope. "You did it, Jacob," she said, sitting across from him. "You saved this company." "We did it," Jacob corrected. "You, Sam, Maria, Daniel, everyone. I just..." stood up. Eleanor smiled, a rare warmth in her expression. That's all it takes, sometimes. One person to stand up and others follow. Your mother would be proud. Jacob's throat tightened. He pulled the photo of Anna from his wallet, tracing her face with his thumb. I wish I could tell her. She knows, Eleanor said softly. Wherever she is, she knows. A year later, Grayson Textiles was thriving. The Meridian contract was a success, leading to new deals and a renewed reputation. Jacob had grown into his role there, his confidence tempered by humility. The workers called him by his first name, a sign of respect earned through action, not title. Maria was promoted to operations manager, and Daniel led a new ethics task force, ensuring transparency at every level. One morning, Jacob invited Eleanor and Samuel for coffee at the Willow. The three sat at their usual table, the air light with laughter and shared memories. You've done more than I ever hoped, Eleanor said, raising her cup. This company's soul is back. Samuel nodded, his eyes misty. You're not just Anna's son, you're Grayson's heart. Jacob smiled, thinking of the long road from driver to CEO. He'd been tested, doubted, and pushed to his limits, but he'd never lost sight of why he'd started, to do what was right, no matter the cost. As they left the restaurant, Jacob glanced at the factory in the distance, its lights glowing against the dawn. It wasn't just a building, it was a legacy, one he'd carry forward for as long as he could. The factory's hum was different now, a steady rhythm of purpose, rather than the frantic clatter of a struggling machine. Jacob Ellis stood on the factory floor, watching the looms churn out bolts of fabric for the Meridian contract. Workers nodded as he passed, their faces no longer shadowed by fear but lit with cautious optimism. It had been a year since he'd taken the helm as CEO of Grayson Textiles. A year since he'd been a driver with no idea of the legacy tied to his name. Yet the weight of leadership never lifted. It only grew heavier with each decision. Maria Torres, now operations manager, joined him near line 4, her clipboard tucked under her arm. We're ahead of schedule, she said, her voice bright. Meridian's thrilled. They're talking about a long-term partnership. Jacob smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That's great, Maria, but something's still off. The audit's done, Lang's gone, Elaine and Peterson are out, but I can't shake the feeling we're missing something. Maria frowned, following his gaze to the workers. You think there's another leak? Maybe, Jacob said. Or maybe it's just me. This job, it's like walking a tightrope. One wrong move, and we're back where we started. Maria clapped a hand on his shoulder. You're doing better than you think. The workers trust you. That's more than we had a year ago. Jacob nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. Trust was fragile, and he'd seen how quickly it could shatter. He thought of his mother, Anna, whose photo he kept on his desk. She'd trusted Grayson once, only to be betrayed. He couldn't let that happen again. Not to the workers, not to the company, not to her memory. To her memory. Later that day, Jacob met Samuel Holt in the small archive room on the 3rd floor, a dusty space filled with boxes of old records. Samuel had been spending more time there lately, digging through the company's past. His hands were smudged with ink, his face etched with a quiet intensity. Find anything? Jacob asked, pulling up a chair. Samuel pushed a stack of papers toward him. More than I expected. These are contracts from the early 2000s when your mother was here. There's a pattern. Small payments, unlisted vendors, all approved by someone named E. Grayson. Jacob's brow furrowed. Eleanor? That doesn't make sense. She's the one who built this place on honesty. Not Eleanor, Samuel said, his voice low. Edward Grayson, her brother. He was CFO before Lang, back when the company was still growing. He left suddenly in 2003, right after your mother was fired. Jacob's heart skipped a beat. You think Edward was involved in her dismissal? Samuel nodded. I know he was. I was there. Edward was complicated, brilliant with numbers, but greedy. He started siphoning funds via small amounts at first, then bigger. Your mother caught on. She confronted him, and he had her fired to cover his tracks. Jacob's hands clenched into fists. Why didn't you stop it? Samuel's face fell, his eyes distant. I tried, but I was just a floor manager then, no real power. Eleanor was overseas, closing a deal. By the time she found out, Anna was gone, and Edward had disappeared. We thought it was over. But these records... He tapped the papers. They show Edward's still out there, tied to shell companies that supplied our missing shipments. Jacob's mind reeled. You're saying Edward's behind the thefts? Even now? I'm saying it's possible, Samuel said. Lang worked under Edward years ago. Elaine, too. They might have been following his playbook. Jacob stood, pacing the small room. We need to find him. If he's still pulling strings, he could tank us. Samuel nodded. I've got a contact, a private investigator. She's discreet, but expensive. If we're doing this, we need Eleanor's approval. That evening, Jacob met Eleanor at her home, a modest house on the outskirts of Hartfield. It was the first time he'd seen her outside the factory, and she looked smaller somehow, less like the titan of industry, and more like a woman carrying decades of battles. They sat in her living room, a fire crackling in the hearth. Edward, Eleanor said, her voice heavy with pain. I should have known he'd come back. He was always ambitious, but I never thought he'd betray us like this. Jacob leaned forward, the records spread on the coffee table. Samuel thinks he's behind the missing shipments. If we can find him, we can stop this for good. Eleanor's eyes hardened. Do it. Hire the investigator. But Jacob, be careful. Edward's not just greedy, he's cunning. If he knows we're onto him, he'll disappear again. Jacob nodded, feeling the weight of her trust. I won't let you down. The investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Rachel Vance, worked fast. Within a week, she'd traced Edward's shell companies to a warehouse in a neighbouring city. Jacob, Maria and Samuel drove out under cover of night, their nerves on edge. The warehouse was a run-down building, its windows dark, but a faint light glowed from inside. Rachel met them at the entrance, her face grim. He's here, she whispered, but he's not alone. There's at least 3 others, armed. Jacob's stomach dropped. Armed? This is bigger than we thought. Maria gripped his arm. We should call the police. Not yet, Samuel said. If we spook them, they'll destroy the evidence. We need to get inside, get proof. Rachel handed Jacob a small camera. Wear this. It's live streaming to my laptop. Whatever you see, we'll have it recorded. Jacob hesitated, his heart pounding. He wasn't a hero. He was a driver turned CEO out of his depth. But he thought of the workers, of Maria's determination, of his mother's pride. He clipped the camera to his jacket and nodded. Let's do this. The warehouse smelled of dust and oil, its shadows thick with secrets. Jacob and Samuel crept through the aisles, their footsteps muffled. Maria stayed outside with Rachel, ready to call for backup if needed. Jacob's camera captured everything, crates stamped with Grayson's logo, documents scattered on a table, and voices echoing from a back room. Jacob peered around a corner, his breath catching. Edward Grayson stood there, older but unmistakable, his silver hair slicked back, his suit pristine. He was barking orders at 2 men loading crates onto a truck. Hurry up, Edward snapped. Apex wants this by tomorrow, or we're done. Jacob's blood ran cold. Apex Industries, the vultures Eleanor had warned about. Edward wasn't just stealing, he was selling Grayson's materials to their biggest competitor. Samuel signalled for Jacob to stay low. They edged closer, the camera catching every word. Edward's phone rang, and he answered, his voice low. Lang's out, but I've got others. The kid's in over his head. He won't last. Jacob's jaw tightened. Edward was talking about him. He felt a surge of anger, but Samuel's hand on his arm kept him grounded. They had what they needed. It was time to go. As they turned to leave, a crate shifted, crashing to the floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Edward's head snapped up. Who's there? He shouted, pulling a gun from his jacket. Jacob's heart stopped. Samuel grabbed his arm, pulling him behind a stack of crates as footsteps approached. Stay quiet, Samuel whispered. Rachel's got the footage. We just need to get out. But the footsteps were closing in. Jacob's mind raced. If they were caught, the evidence might not matter. He spotted a fire alarm on the wall, just out of reach. It was a long shot, but it might create a distraction. Cover me, he whispered to Samuel, then darted for the alarm. He yanked the lever, and a piercing wail filled the warehouse. Edward cursed, and the men scattered, giving Jacob and Samuel a chance to slip out the back. Outside, Maria and Rachel were waiting, their faces pale. You okay? Maria asked, grabbing Jacob's arm. Yeah, Jacob panted. We've got him. Let's get this to Eleanor. The footage was a bombshell. Eleanor called an emergency board meeting the next morning, playing the video for the stunned directors. Edward's voice, clear and damning, laid bare his betrayal. The board voted to press charges, and by noon, police had raided the warehouse, arresting Edward and his accomplices. Jacob stood in Eleanor's office, watching the news unfold on a small TV. "It's over," he said, almost disbelieving. "Not quite," Eleanor said, her voice soft but firm. "You've cleaned out the corruption, but now you have to rebuild. The workers need to know they're safe." Jacob nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I'll tell them. No more secrets." The factory hall was packed again, the air thick with anticipation. Jacob stood at the podium, his hands steady despite the eyes on him. Maria, Daniel, and Samuel stood in the front row, their presence a quiet strength. Eleanor was there too, her face calm but proud. "We've been through a lot," Jacob began, his voice carrying over the crowd. "This company was built on trust, but for too long, people betrayed that trust. Elaine Carter, Victor Lang, Edward Grayson, they thought they could take from you, from us. They were wrong." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We've stopped them. The missing shipments are back. The Meridian contract is secure, and we're stronger than ever. But this isn't my victory. It's yours. Every one of you who kept showing up, who believed in this place, you're the reason Grayson Textiles is still standing." The crowd erupted in applause, the sound washing over Jacob like a wave. He saw Maria's grin, Daniel's nod, Samuel's quiet smile. For the first time, he felt like he belonged, not just as a driver or a CEO, but as part of something bigger. "I want to make a promise," Jacob continued. "No more secrets, no more cover-ups. This company belongs to you as much as it does to me. We'll rebuild it together, honest, strong, and true to what Eleanor and my mother believed in." As the applause faded, Jacob stepped down, shaking hands with workers who approached him. Their gratitude was raw, unfiltered, and it filled a part of him he hadn't known was empty. That evening, Jacob, Eleanor, and Samuel returned to the Willow for coffee. The familiar table felt like home now, a place where truths were spoken and burdens shared. Eleanor raised her cup, her eyes twinkling. "To new beginnings." "To family," Samuel added, his voice thick. Jacob clinked his cup against theirs, thinking of his mother. He'd hung her photo in the factory's main hall, alongside pictures of other workers who'd shaped Grayson's history. Her smile was there every morning, a reminder of why he kept going. "You've done more than I ever dreamed," Eleanor said. "But the real work starts now. Leading isn't about one big fight, it's about every day, every choice." "I know," Jacob said, "and I'm ready." Samuel chuckled. "You sound like Anna. She never backed down either." Jacob smiled, his heart full. He wasn't just carrying a legacy, he was building one. The next morning, Jacob arrived at the factory at dawn. The looms were already humming, the workers moving with purpose. Maria greeted him with a stack of reports, her energy infectious. "Ready for another day, boss?" "Always," Jacob said, returning her smile. As he walked through the factory, he felt the weight of his mother's pride, Eleanor's trust, and Samuel's faith. Grayson Textiles wasn't perfect, no company was, but it had a soul again, forged in honesty and courage, and Jacob knew, no matter what came next, he'd fight for it. Because sometimes true power isn't in titles or wealth. It's in the choice to stand up, to do what's right, even when the world expects you to stay small. Jacob Ellis had been a driver, a nobody in the eyes of many, but in the end he was the one who reminded Grayson Textiles and himself what it meant to lead with heart. The dawn light crept over Hartfield, painting the factory's steel walls in hues of gold. Jacob Ellis stood at the entrance of Grayson Textiles, his breath visible in the crisp morning air. It had been 18 months since he'd traded his driver's uniform for the title of CEO, a journey that felt both like a lifetime and a fleeting dream. The factory hummed behind him, a living thing reborn through the sweat and trust of its people. Yet today, Jacob felt a quiet unease, a sense that the story wasn't quite finished. Inside, the main hall was bustling with activity. Workers prepared for a special event, a celebration of Grayson's renewed success, marked by the Meridian contract's completion and a new deal with a major retailer. Banners hung from the rafters proclaiming Grayson Textiles stronger together. Maria Torres, now a commanding presence as operations manager, was directing the setup, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Jacob," she called, waving him over. "You're late. We've got 1,000 things to do before the ceremony starts." He grinned, joining her near a stage set up at the hall's center. Sorry, boss. Got caught up staring at the sunrise. You know, big CEO thoughts. Maria rolled her eyes, but her smile was warm. Save the poetry for your speech. The workers are expecting you to say something profound. No pressure. Jacob's stomach twisted. Public speaking still made him nervous, despite the countless meetings he'd led. Any tips? Just be you, Maria said, softening. That's why they're here. They don't want a suit. They want Jacob. He nodded, grateful for her steady presence. Maria had been his rock, her fire and loyalty anchoring him through the darkest days. He thought of Daniel, now heading the ethics task force, and the countless workers who'd rallied behind him. This wasn't his company. It was theirs. As the morning wore on, Jacob walked the factory floor, shaking hands and listening to stories. A seamstress named Lila showed him a photo of her daughter, who'd just started college thanks to Grayson's new scholarship program. A mechanic named Tom thanked him for the upgraded safety gear, a change Jacob had fought the board to fund. Each conversation was a thread, weaving a tapestry of trust that held the company together. In the archive room, Jacob found Samuel Holt sorting through a box of old photos. The older man's hands moved with care, his face softened by memory. "Found something you'll want to see," Samuel said, handing Jacob a faded Polaroid. It was a group shot from the 1990s, workers gathered around a loom, smiling for the camera. In the centre stood Anna Ellis, Jacob's mother, her eyes bright with pride. Beside her was a younger Samuel, his arm around her shoulders. Jacob's throat tightened. "She looks happy here," he said. "She was," Samuel replied. "This place was her home, until it wasn't. I've spent years regretting what happened to her. Seeing you here, it feels like a second chance." Jacob traced his mother's face with his thumb. "Why didn't she tell me about you? About any of this?" Samuel sighed, sitting on a nearby chair. "Anna was stubborn, like you. When Edward fired her, she felt betrayed. Not just by him, but by me, by Eleanor, by the whole company. She wanted to protect you from that pain. But she never stopped loving this place. She'd be so proud of you, Jacob." Jacob swallowed hard, slipping the photo into his wallet beside the one he already carried. "I'm trying to make it right, for her, for everyone." "You are," Samuel said, his voice firm. "But don't carry her weight alone. You've got us." The ceremony began at noon. The hall packed with workers, their families, and a handful of board members. Eleanor Grayson stood at the podium first, her silver hair catching the light. At 69, she was a quieter presence now, her role as advisor giving her space to rest, but her voice still commanded the room. "2 years ago, this company was on the brink," she said. "We faced betrayal, loss, and doubt. But today, we stand stronger because of you, because of your work, your trust, and your courage, and because of one man who reminded us what Grayson Textiles is about." She turned to Jacob, her eyes shining. "Jacob Ellis, you didn't just save this company. You gave it a soul. Come up here." The crowd erupted in applause as Jacob stepped onto the stage, his heart pounding. He gripped the podium, scanning the faces before him, Maria's grin, Daniel's nod, Samuel's quiet pride, and the workers who'd become his family. He took a deep breath, his voice steady. "Thank you, Eleanor," he began, "and thank you all. I never thought I'd be standing here. I was a driver, just trying to do my job when I saw something wrong. I couldn't stay silent, not for Daniel, not for any of you, but I didn't do this alone. Maria, Daniel, Samuel, Eleanor, you all stood with me. This company isn't mine, it's ours." The crowd cheered, and Jacob felt a warmth spread through him. "We've been through fire," he continued. "Elaine Carter, Victor Lang, Edward Grayson, they tried to break us, but they didn't know who they were up against. You're the heart of Grayson Textiles. You're why we're here, why we'll keep going." He paused, pulling the Polaroid from his wallet. "My mother, Anna Ellis, worked here years ago. She believed in this place even when it let her down. I'm here because of her, and I promise you this, as long as I'm leading, no one will be left behind. We'll build a future that honors every hand that weaves our story." The hall roared, the sound echoing off the walls. Jacob stepped back, overwhelmed, as workers surged forward to shake his hand. Maria hugged him, her eyes misty. "Told you," she whispered. "Just be you." That evening, Jacob sat alone in his office, the factory quiet around him. The celebration had been a success, but a quiet ache lingered. He opened the leather-bound journal Eleanor had given him, its pages filled with her father's words about legacy and trust. A new entry caught his eye, written in Eleanor's neat script. "Jacob, you've done what I never could. You've made Grayson whole again. Keep the faith." A knock at the door broke his thoughts. It was Lila, the seamstress, holding a small package. "This is for you," she said, her voice shy. "From the workers." Jacob opened it to find a woven scarf, its threads a blend of cotton and silk, embroidered with the Grayson logo and his initials. A note was tucked inside. "To Jacob, our leader. Thank you for believing in us." His eyes stung as he draped the scarf over his shoulders. It was soft, warm, a tangible reminder of the trust he'd earned. He stepped to the window, looking out at the factory below. The lights glowed against the dusk, a beacon in the heart of Hartfield. The next morning, Jacob arrived early, as he always did. Maria was waiting with a new stack of contracts, her energy undimmed. "Big day," she said. "The retailer wants to double their order. Ready to make history?" Jacob grinned, rolling up his sleeves. "Let's do it." As they worked, Samuel stopped by, a twinkle in his eye. "Got a surprise for you," he said, handing Jacob an envelope. Inside was a deed, a small plot of land near the factory, donated to create a community centre for workers' families. "It's in Anna's name," Samuel said. "Thought it was fitting." Jacob's throat tightened. "Thank you, Sam, for everything." Samuel clapped his shoulder. "Keep going, kid. You're just getting started." Months passed, and Grayson Textiles grew stronger. The community centre opened, its walls filled with laughter and hope. Jacob visited often, teaching kids to read and helping parents with job training. He never forgot where he'd come from, the driver's seat, the late night studying, the mother who'd given him her strength. One evening he met Eleanor and Samuel at the Willow for their ritual coffee. The table was a touchstone, a place where their story had begun. "You've changed this city," Eleanor said, her voice warm. "Grayson's not just a company anymore, it's a promise." Samuel raised his cup. "To Anna, and to you, Jacob." Jacob clinked his cup against theirs, his heart full. He thought of the scarf, the photo, the journal, threads of a legacy woven through time. He wasn't just a driver, a CEO, or a son. He was a man who'd chosen to stand up, to fight for what was right, and to carry a dream forward. As they left, Jacob glanced at the factory in the distance. Its lights burned bright, a testament to the people inside. Grayson Textiles wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And in its heart beat the courage of those who chose to do what was right, no matter the cost. Because true leadership isn't born in boardrooms or resumes, it's forged in the quiet moments, the hard choices, the refusal to look away. Jacob Ellis had started as a nobody, but he'd become the soul of a company and a legacy that would endure. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you loved it. Subscribe for more tales of courage and heart. See you soon.